What if I told you that everything you've learned about history is only half the truth? That every major event, wars, revolutions, economic collapses, was not just a coincidence, but part of a carefully crafted plan? What if history isn't just a collection of random events, but a script written by those who control the world from behind the curtain? Building curiosity, why should you listen? They say history repeats itself, but have you ever wondered why? Why do nations rise and fall in the same patterns? Why do wars erupt at just the right time to reshape global power? Why are the same families, organizations, and ideologies always at the center of major turning points? Because history is not what it seems. It is a game of power, one that has been played for centuries, hidden in plain sight. Tonight, I will expose a pattern buried beneath the pages of history, one they don't want you to see. Once you understand it, you will never look at the world the same way again. You ready? History is not random. The events that shape our world, from the rise and fall of empires to economic collapses and global conflicts, follow a pattern, one that has been repeating for centuries. Yet most people never notice it. We are taught that history is a chaotic sequence of events driven by unpredictable forces, individual decisions, and natural occurrences. But what if history follows a structure, an underlying design that dictates how civilizations rise, prosper, and ultimately fall? Throughout history, the same patterns emerge, revealing a deeper order beneath the chaos. Consider the way powerful civilizations ascend, driven by innovation, economic growth, and cultural strength. They expand, dominate, and influence the world around them. Then, almost inevitably, corruption seeps in, leadership weakens, and internal division grows. Before long, external pressures mount, wars erupt, and the once mighty civilization crumbles, only to be replaced by another that follows the same trajectory. From the Roman Empire to the Ottoman Empire, from the British Empire to the modern superpowers, this pattern remains unchanged. It is no accident that the greatest empires of history have fallen under strikingly similar circumstances. Economic instability, social unrest, moral decline, and conflicts. These are not mere coincidences, but recurring signs of an inevitable cycle. The same economic bubbles that caused financial collapses in ancient civilizations are the same forces behind modern stock market crashes. The revolutions that reshaped nations centuries ago follow the same blueprint as those happening today. Even the wars that seem spontaneous and unavoidable often trace back to long-term hidden influences working behind the scenes. The most intriguing aspect of this repeating cycle is how it often seems directed, almost as if there is an invisible hand guiding it. When societies reach their peak, forces emerge that accelerate their downfall. Certain decisions are made, conflicts are sparked, and economic crises are triggered, leading to collapse. But here's the most unsettling truth. Once one empire falls, another emerges to take its place, following the exact same trajectory. The names changed, the technology evolves, but the fundamental pattern remains the same. Why does this happen? Why do we continue to repeat the same mistakes, falling into the same traps, century after century? The answer is hidden in how history is recorded, taught, and understood. If people knew that the rise and fall of nations follow a predictable cycle, they might begin to question who benefits from these cycles and why nothing is done to break them. This knowledge has been buried, ignored, or dismissed as conspiracy because those in power understand the importance of controlling the narrative. If people believe history is random, they will never look for the deeper forces at play. But once you recognize the pattern, you can no longer ignore it. The question is not whether history will repeat itself, but whether we will continue to be blind to the cycle or finally break free from it. Controlled narratives shape the way we understand history, influencing what we believe to be true and what we dismiss as fiction. The version of history we are taught is not always the full story. It is a carefully curated selection of events, perspectives, and interpretations that serve specific interests. From textbooks to documentaries, from political speeches to media reports, history is presented in a way that reinforces certain ideas while conveniently omitting others. But who decides what is worth remembering and what should be forgotten? And more importantly, why? Every civilization has maintained its own version of history, often crafted by those in power to serve their agendas. Victors write history, and those who control the narrative control how future generations perceive the past. Stories of conquest are framed as tales of heroism. Rebellions against oppression are labeled as acts of terrorism. Economic crises are blamed on circumstances rather than deliberate manipulation. The truth is often buried beneath layers of propaganda, misdirection, and selective storytelling. Events that challenge the official narrative are erased, downplayed, or rewritten to fit a preferred version of reality. Consider how certain historical figures are glorified while others, often just as influential, are ignored. Leaders who serve the interests of the powerful are remembered as visionaries, while those who resist are demonized or forgotten. Great discoveries, groundbreaking inventions, and revolutionary ideas that could have changed the world are often suppressed, only to resurface decades or even centuries later. Information that threatens the status quo is either destroyed or dismissed as conspiracy, ensuring that people never question the deeper mechanisms at play. Wars, revolutions, and major political shifts are rarely spontaneous. They are shaped by forces that the public is rarely made aware of. The official explanations given for these events often simplify or distort the truth, providing convenient narratives that justify certain actions while concealing underlying motives. Economic collapses are blamed on poor management rather than intentional market manipulation. Wars are framed as necessary conflicts for freedom, democracy, or security, even when deeper economic or strategic interests are at stake. Revolutions are presented as uprisings of the people, even when they have been engineered or influenced by hidden players. The way history is controlled extends beyond what is written. It affects how people think, what they believe, and how they react to current events. If a population is taught to see history in a particular way, they are more likely to accept similar patterns when they reoccur. They will fail to recognize manipulation because they were never told it existed in the first place. They will see cycles of conflict and crisis as unavoidable rather than as deliberate strategies used to maintain control. But the truth is always there for those willing to look beyond the surface. When we question the narratives we have been given, when we dig deeper into the suppressed histories and hidden truths, we begin to see the world differently. The question is, are we willing to see beyond the illusion, or will we continue to accept the version of history we have been told? The rise and fall of empires follow a pattern so consistent that it almost seems scripted. Time and again, powerful civilizations emerge, dominate, and then collapse under eerily similar circumstances. The names change, the locations shift, and the timelines vary, but the process remains the same. This cycle of power is not random. It follows a blueprint that has repeated for thousands of years. From the Roman Empire to the British Empire, from the Mongols to modern superpowers, every great civilization has followed the same trajectory. Expansion, peak, corruption, decline, and eventual collapse. At the heart of every empire's rise is ambition, innovation, and strength. A group of people, whether through conquest, trade, or diplomacy, manages to gain dominance. They build infrastructure, create laws, and expand their influence. They establish economies that thrive, producing wealth, culture, and military power. At their peak, these empires appear unstoppable. They control vast territories, dictate global affairs, and project an image of absolute strength. But beneath the surface, the seeds of their downfall are already taking root. The first cracks often appear in governance. Corruption seeps in as leaders prioritize their own wealth and power over the needs of the people. Elites consolidate control, growing disconnected from the very foundations that made the empire successful. Policies become self-serving, favoring the few while burdening the many. Injustice rises, and resentment builds among the people, leading to internal instability. This cycle is evident in every fallen empire, from the decadence of Rome's later years to the unchecked greed that weakened the European colonial powers. Economic troubles follow soon after. As wealth concentrates in fewer hands, the middle and lower classes struggle. Trade routes that once brought prosperity become unreliable, resources are mismanaged, and inflation devalues currency. The economic engines that once fueled the empire start to slow, and financial crises emerge. In some cases, leaders resort to excessive taxation, triggering further discontent. This economic fragility weakens the empire's ability to maintain control, making it vulnerable to both internal rebellion and external threats. As the empire weakens from within, external forces take advantage, rivals rise, sensing an opportunity to challenge the declining power. Military conflicts increase, often draining resources even further. Sometimes these conflicts are direct wars. Other times they come in the form of economic pressure, proxy battles, or strategic alliances against the weakening empire. What was once a dominant force now finds itself struggling to maintain its position. Eventually, the collapse becomes inevitable. It may happen suddenly, as in the case of the Soviet Union, or gradually, like the decline of the Ottoman Empire. The empire either fractures into smaller states, is overtaken by a new rising power, or simply fades into irrelevance. But the most interesting part of this pattern is what follows. A new power inevitably rises, following the same script as those before it. The cycle resets, and the next great empire begins its journey toward dominance, only to eventually meet the same fate. The question is not whether the cycle will repeat, but who will be next. Fear and conflict have always been the most effective tools for controlling societies, shaping history, and guiding the course of nations. Throughout history, wars, revolutions, and economic crises have rarely been random. They often arise at moments that serve the interests of those in power. Fear is a weapon, and conflict is the means by which power is redistributed, often at the expense of the common people. The deeper one looks into the past, the more evident it becomes that many of the greatest turning points in history were not spontaneous, but deliberately orchestrated. Fear has the power to paralyze, to make people accept extreme measures, to surrender their rights, and to allow decisions that they would otherwise resist. It can take many forms. Fear of invasion, fear of poverty, fear of disease, fear of an unseen enemy. When people are afraid, they seek protection, and that protection often comes with a cost. Obedience, submission, and a willingness to let those in power make decisions unchecked. This has been the pattern for centuries. Leaders, governments, and ruling elites have long understood that a frightened population is an easily controlled one. Wars are the most obvious manifestation of this strategy. Conflicts that seem to erupt naturally are often influenced, if not directly engineered, by those who stand to gain from them. Whether through territorial expansion, control of resources, or the economic boost that war industries provide, conflict serves as a means to reset power structures and eliminate opposition. The same pattern appears over and over again. Rivalries are inflamed, tensions are escalated, and before the public realizes what is happening, war becomes. Even revolutions, which appear to be grassroots movements for change, have often been influenced by external forces. Many uprisings throughout history have been quietly supported or even instigated by powerful groups who saw them as opportunities to remove rivals, destabilize governments, or reshape nations in ways that benefited them. People are led to believe they are fighting for freedom when, In reality, they are pawns in a larger game. History shows us that fear and conflict are not just byproducts of human nature, but tools that have been used repeatedly to shape the world. The question we must ask is, who benefits? When we start looking at history through that lens, we begin to see the hidden hands that have guided events, ensuring that power remains exactly where it has always been. Throughout history, there have always been hidden influencers. Powerful individuals, secret organizations, and elite groups that operate behind the scenes, shaping events in ways the public never realizes. These forces do not seek attention, nor do they openly claim credit for their influence. Instead, they work in the shadows, guiding economies, governments, and even wars to align with their interests. Their influence is not the stuff of fantasy. It is a documented reality that has played a crucial role in some of history's most defining moments. Every major empire, kingdom, and government has had figures who were never in the public eye, but who held extraordinary power. Kings and emperors often relied on advisors whose names have been forgotten, yet their decisions shaped the fate of nations. Religious orders, banking dynasties, and elite families have for centuries pulled the strings of global affairs, ensuring that power remains in the hands of the few. And even democratic systems, which claim to give power to the people, are often controlled by those who finance elections, control the media, and dictate policy from behind closed doors. Wars and conflicts are rarely started by those who fight them. The decision to go to war is often made by a handful of individuals who have something to gain, whether it be economic profit, political advantage, or the removal of a rival power. These decisions are carefully planned long before the public is even aware of rising tensions. The masses are simply given a reason, a justification, a story that makes them believe the war is necessary. But behind every major conflict, there are those who supply the weapons, control the trade routes, and profit from the destruction. But economies, too, are manipulated by those in power. Throughout history, financial crashes and recoveries have been engineered by those who control banking systems and international markets. They decide when money flows freely and when it is restricted. They dictate interest rates, control inflation, and determine which industries thrive and which collapse. Those who truly control economies are not the politicians seen on television, but the individuals and institutions who hold the power of wealth distribution. The general population simply experiences the consequences of decisions made in secret. Even social movements, which seem to emerge from the people, are often influenced by hidden players. While genuine grassroots efforts do exist, history is full of examples where uprisings and revolutions were supported, guided, or even instigated by powerful forces looking to reshape a nation in a way that benefits them. A movement that appears spontaneous may in reality be the result of years of planning, financing, and manipulation. The greatest trick of hidden influencers is making people believe they do not exist. By staying in the background, they ensure that history appears to be shaped by natural events, coincidence, or the will of the people. But the reality is far different. The world does not move forward by chance. It is guided by those who understand power and know how to wield it from the shadows. Throughout history, revolutionary ideas, groundbreaking technologies, and world-changing discoveries have been suppressed, hidden, or destroyed. These are not isolated incidents, but part of a recurring pattern where knowledge that could challenge existing power structures is buried before it can disrupt the status quo. The suppression of knowledge is one of the most effective ways to maintain control over societies. If people do not know what is possible, they will never demand it. If they never learn about alternative systems, they will continue accepting the one they are given. One of the most common forms of suppression is the destruction of knowledge. Libraries have been burned, manuscripts lost, and entire civilizations erased from history, not because they lacked importance, but because their knowledge posed a threat. The Library of Alexandria, one of the greatest centers of knowledge in the ancient world, was mysteriously destroyed, taking with it countless works of science, philosophy, and history. Some believe that much of what was lost could have accelerated human progress by centuries. The same pattern repeated itself throughout history. Books banned, scientists persecuted, and discoveries kept secret. Beyond destruction, suppression often takes the form of censorship. Ideas that challenge dominant narratives are ridiculed, dismissed, or silenced. Thinkers who propose revolutionary concepts are labeled as heretics, conspiracy theorists, or threats to society. Many of history's greatest minds, from Nikola Tesla to Galileo, faced opposition not because their ideas lacked merit, but because they disrupted powerful interests. Galileo's support for the heliocentric model was met with persecution because it threatened the authority of the church. Tesla's work on free energy was ignored and buried as it posed a direct challenge to industries built on profit-driven energy systems. Technological suppression is another key aspect of this pattern. Throughout history, there have been inventions and discoveries that could have changed the world, but they were either hidden or controlled. There are countless cases where breakthrough technologies, particularly those related to energy, transportation, and medicine, have been patented and locked away, never reaching the public. Why? Because their widespread adoption would have disrupted industries worth trillions of dollars. Free energy, cures for diseases, and alternative economic systems have been suppressed not because they were impossible, but because they would have shifted power away from those who control resources and wealth. Even social and political ideas have been systematically suppressed. Throughout history, movements that aim to create fairer, more equitable societies have been crushed before they could gain momentum. Alternative economic systems, governance models, and philosophies that challenge the dominance of the ruling elite have been erased from mainstream discourse. By controlling what people learn and believe, those in power ensure that change only happens within limits they define. The truth is, history is not just a record of what was discovered, but also of what was hidden. Every time humanity has been on the verge of a major breakthrough, something or someone has stepped in to push it back. The question we must ask is not just what we know, but what we were never allowed to know. History does not simply repeat itself, it is repeated by design. The same events, the same crises, and the same conflicts occur over and over, not because they are inevitable, but because they are deliberately recreated. Wars, economic crashes, and political upheavals are not always accidents of history. They often follow carefully orchestrated patterns, guided by those who understand how to use chaos to their advantage. When we study the past, we do not just see echoes of previous mistakes, we see a blueprint, a cycle that is intentionally maintained to keep power in the hands of the few. The repetition of historical events is not a coincidence. Every few generations, we see the same economic collapses, the same battles between nations, and the same social struggles that seem to emerge naturally. But when we look deeper, we find that many of these events are set in motion long before they happen. Financial systems are designed to collapse at specific moments, ensuring that wealth is transferred to those already in control. Wars are provoked under false pretenses, leading to the destruction of one power while another rises in its place. Revolutions that seem spontaneous are often backed by hidden forces with their own agendas. Take economic crashes, for example. History is filled with financial crises that wipe out the savings of ordinary people while allowing the elite to consolidate more power. The Great Depression, the 2008 financial crisis, and countless other economic downturns all follow the same script. Rapid expansion, artificial inflation of markets, sudden collapse, and the buying up of assets by those who knew it was coming. This cycle ensures that the rich become richer while the masses struggle to recover. The public is told that these crises are unpredictable, but in reality, they are engineered by those who control financial institutions, creating waves of destruction and reconstruction that always benefit the same people. Wars follow the same pattern. The justifications may change, but the underlying motivations remain the same. One nation is painted as a threat, propaganda is spread, tensions rise, and eventually war becomes necessary. Yet, when the dust settles, we often find that the real winners are not the people fighting the battles, but the industries supplying the weapons, the banks funding both sides, and the political powers that gain new territories, resources, or control. The cycle of war ensures that no one nation remains dominant for too long without facing the inevitable downfall engineered by its rivals. Even social movements and uprisings often fit into this pattern. People rise up against oppression, demanding change, and in many cases they succeed temporarily. But without breaking the cycle, new leaders emerge, the system reshapes itself, and before long the same problems return in a different form. Societies are kept in a constant state of struggle, always believing they are on the verge of true change, yet always trapped in a repeating loop. History is not just repeating itself, it is being repeated for a reason. Until we recognize the cycle and understand who benefits from it, we will continue playing our roles in a script that has been written long before we were born. The greatest secret of history is not hidden in lost manuscripts or buried beneath ancient ruins. It is hidden in plain sight. The truth is there, woven into the events we have been told, yet distorted just enough to keep us from seeing the full picture. Those who control the past control the future, and those who control the present control the past. This is not just a poetic statement, it is a strategy that has been used for centuries. By manipulating how history is recorded, taught, and remembered, the most powerful forces in the world ensure that people remain unaware of the deeper truths that shape their lives. Every empire, every government, every ruling class has understood the importance of controlling historical narratives. The way history is written determines what people believe, how they behave, and how they react to future events. If history convinces people that oppression is natural, they will not resist it. If history tells them that cycles of war and economic collapse are unavoidable, they will accept them without question. If history erases those who challenge the system, future generations will never know that resistance was possible. The real story of humanity is not just about kings and battles, but about the struggle to control what people perceive as reality. The manipulation of history is not just about altering facts, it is about shaping belief systems. The masses are taught a version of history that serves the interests of those in power. They are given heroes to admire and villains to despise, carefully chosen to reinforce existing structures of control. Some of the greatest figures in history, those who truly challenge authority, are either demonized, erased, or rewritten to fit a more acceptable narrative. Meanwhile, those who upheld the power structure are glorified, their flaws ignored, their true motivations